On right now in Nashville, and as Alabama looks to turn the page after missing the playoff last year, as I mentioned, there'll be quite a few question marks. How do the new coordinators fit in? And more importantly, who will start under center after their Heisman-winning quarterback was selected #1 overall? Well, here's the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Mr. Nick Saban.
We have 3 guys that are competing for that position right now. I don't think anybody has actually separated themselves yet to this point, and I don't think it's something that we're trying to rush. So I think we got to let this sort of develop and make sure we let the cake bake until somebody separates themselves.
All right, I don't know about the cake bake phrase, but I do know when you got 2 or 3 quarterbacks, they say you got none. The Crimson Tide will be dealing with some major changes, as I mentioned, heading into next season. Tommy Rees, Kevin Steele are the new coordinators in Tuscaloosa that will look to put Alabama back on top. As for Bryce Young's replacement, you heard Nick Saban say right there, no one has really separated themselves. So we say good morning to our good friend Paul Finebaum, who is here again from Nashville from SEC Media Days. And so, Paul, I ask you, what is the bigger issue for Alabama? Is it the quarterback uncertainty or the changing of the coordinators?
Shae, it's the quarterback situation. I think the 2 coordinators are good. Tommy Rees is very young, but Nick Saban told me yesterday that he absolutely loves the former Notre Dame quarterback and assistant. Kevin Steele's been there 3 different times during his career. In fact, Kevin Steele was Nick Saban's first defensive coordinator in 2007. The quarterback situation is really a major conundrum. They're just simply nobody has established themselves. Jalen Milroe was the backup last year. He came in for Bryce Young in 1 game, did not play very well, and really mostly played mop-up after that. Ty Simpson is a young player that many people expect perhaps could be the starter. And then the transfer, Buckner from Notre Dame, he got beat out by Sam Hartman. That doesn't make him a bad quarterback, but he was very inconsistent last year, especially from a turnover standpoint. And this would be normal at most any other school, but as all of you know, Alabama has had a 4 quarterback run here that is epic. With Jalen, Tua, Mac Jones, and obviously Bryce Young.
I'm going to go the other way with coordinators, because, Paul, you're exactly right, because you don't want to have quarterback issues going in, especially at Alabama, what they've been able to do lately. And, Shae, you're right. You have 3 of 1, that you don't have 1 of any when it comes to the quarterback position. There's no doubt about that. But you mentioned Tommy Rees being the new offensive coordinator, Paul. 30 years of age, from a quarterback in Notre Dame, from offensive coordinator in Notre Dame. And now Kevin Steele, his 3rd time now being on Nick Saban's staff. It is not easy, more than ever before, to be a coordinator under Nick Saban, but also because now there's a new power, and it's called Georgia. And now you got to try to override that Georgia football team with new coordinators trying to make sure everything is going to fit to the liking of Nick Saban, who has won 7 national championships, 6 with Alabama and 1 with LSU. It can't be easy. There's a term called thick skin. You got to have crocodile skin if you're going to be a coordinator working under Nick Saban, and especially now with so many other uncertainties going into the season for the first time in a long time when it comes to Alabama football. You want to make sure that the players are right, but the guys calling the plays have to put them in that kind of position. So I'll go that different way. The quarterback issue is definitely an issue, but having 2 new coordinators with the new power in the SEC called Georgia, I think that's more of a bigger issue for Alabama, the coordinators, more than the quarterback issue they got right now going into training camp.
Yeah, for me, Freddie, I'm gonna side with Paul on this one. I'm gonna go the quarterback position because Alabama go through coordinators like no other. You talk about offensive coordinator-wise, you had Steve Sarkisian, you had Bill O'Brien, you had Lane Kiffin, now you had Tommy Rees. Yeah, like you have
Georgia.
Like they literally go through coordinators like no other. But I think for me, it's the quarterback position because when you look at this team in the last 4 quarterbacks that they did have, you look at a Jalen Hurts, who was a 2nd-round draft pick and the highest-paid quarterback in the league right now, and what he's doing in the NFL. You look at a Tua Tagovailoa, who was a 1st-round draft pick, a Mac Jones, a 1st round, and then Bryce Young, who was a #1 overall draft pick last year. I think the quarterback position for me, because I look at a young receiver group that they have, in which was a deficiency last year for them. But I'm looking forward to the growth. But if you don't have the quarterback to get those guys the ball, it's going to be hard for them to be able to grow. So now you got to go back to that round and pound game, in which an era of college football that I think is just, is it feasible? Yes, but it's not the thing that you really want to go to when you're coming off the quarterbacks that you did have. So I just think when you look at Kobe Prentice, you look at a young guy in Isaiah Bond, who's from Georgia, and I watched him play at Buford High School numerous of occasions, Ja'Cory Brooks. Are any of those quarterbacks going to be able to get them the football when they got to go against a team that's scoring, 30, 35, 32 points per game. Can they score enough? Or are they just going to have to rely on McClellan at the running back position to do it all?
Reality of the situation is this is something we've seen from Alabama before with the quarterback, because the turnovers they've had at the quarterback position through the draft, especially lately, has shown that it has figured itself out every single year. The other day, Paul, you were the one that was pointing this out to us. Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. You could go on down the line, and now obviously Bryce Young, and the same thing with the coordinators, Harry, as you pointed out. We've seen the turnover before. To me, the biggest issue is none of the above with Alabama, but it's the penalties. Earlier, we were talking about Bill Belichick, and we saw such an undisciplined football team. And the Patriots this year, same thing with Alabama.
Yeah.
So I guess if I had to pick one, wouldn't you say it's the coordinators, because the coaching needs to buckle down a little bit more and take care of the undisciplinedness, that's not a word, that has to do
But it's good.
with Alabama? Yeah, that's what it feels like, Paul. Like maybe that's the issue here, is that they can't have the same kind of penalties that they did last year.
Yeah, I heard something from Nick Saban and other people yesterday that was really baffling. And I'm paraphrasing and interpreting, but essentially what Saban said was that you had such a great player on offense in Bryce Young and on defense in Will Anderson that some of the other guys did not step up. And I'm like going, all those guys are 5 stars. I mean, those just happen to be the 2 best players individually on both sides of the ball in college football. The attention to detail last year undid them. I mean, twice they had 17 penalties, I think in the Texas game and in the Tennessee game. They melted down in a couple of games. And that is what Nick Saban has to figure out. And I don't know how you do that with the situation that we have been talking about. Coordinators matter. No established quarterback matters. What they do have are unbelievable first-round pick. And you could see it on Nick Saban's face yesterday. This is uncharted territory for him.
Now, I would even say this. Now, the penalties and being disciplined, those are very important things. But I was with College Game Day when we was at the Texas-Alabama game where Alabama had a ton of penalties, right? But what was the difference maker in that game, Paul? It was Bryce Young, that quarterback being that dude, that position. So when I look at it from that standpoint, when you have that guy at the quarterback position, he can make up for a lot of things that you have that might not go right on the football team.
It's amazing how 2 guys, and Paul, you can back me up on this, that are so tied together, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, had the same issues that unraveled their team last year. Where they didn't trust the quarterback or maybe relied too much on the quarterback when it comes to Bryce Young in Alabama. And they tried to do that Mac Jones with New England. And both of these teams were awful when it came to penalties and also red zone defense. It's amazing 2 guys tied together like that had the same kind of issues in 2022 when it comes to Alabama football and Patriots football in the NFL.
And Paul, earlier this week we asked you about this, but in terms of what's ahead this upcoming season, the last time we saw Nick Saban and Alabama miss the playoff, the next year they won the national championship. If that's not the case this year for Alabama, what's on the line for Nick Saban and his legacy?
Well, his legacy is in cement for all the reasons that everyone on this panel and everyone watching knows. I mean, you don't win 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama, and a bad year or even not winning the title affects that. But what it does affect, and I think this is what people have to concentrate on, is his current standing in college football. From my view, I think Kirby Smart has already moved past him in the present day. I think Kirby Smart is a better coach today. I think he has a better program than Nick Saban. That won't change the GOAT status, but if Kirby Smart wins this year, he's got 3 national championships. Saban has 7. I mean, Kirby's not even 50 years old yet, and Saban will be 72 in a couple of months. So that's a big deal. And he's also under assault from Brian Kelly. I mean, this league doesn't have average coaches. They have elite coaches across the board. And next year, you have Texas and Oklahoma coming in here, which makes it even more problematic. And what's really interesting to me about Nick Saban's program, if you talk about the great Nick Saban programs, look at Georgia. That's what Nick Saban's program used to look like.
Yep. For the first time in Nick Saban's era, there's a one sustainable team that you can look at, Paul, the back of your point, and that is Georgia. And I firmly believe in the last 45 years in the SEC, 2 guys have changed this conference forever. Steve Spurrier, when he first got to Florida and changed that conference forever, brought in the SEC championship game, et cetera, et cetera. And Nick Saban, because to your point, Paul, look at all the dudes that say, I want to challenge that guy. And I know there are universities that will pay me enough money to challenge that guy. Those 2 guys in the last 45, 50 years have changed the SEC.
Now, I will say this, though. When you look at Nick Saban, it's not like he hasn't recently been to a national championship.
Right.
He won it in 2020.
Right.
Back-to-back years, he got there in 2021. He just happened to lose to Georgia on top of having back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners.
Right, and also lost 2 games last in the last possession.
And they have 5-star recruits coming in and out like no other.
Yep.
Like kids in a candy store going to get what they want.
Yeah.
Not only 5-star recruits, they have the most players drafted every year, too.
I think Saban's fine.
I think he's doing just fine. Paul, thanks so much for the insight, as always. Enjoy SEC Media Days. We'll catch up with you in just a little bit.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.